this video is all about stretching. We have a tendency sometimes to focus on one exercise at a time, and actually this week we're going to do a few groups. And the first groups we've decided on is stretching. Stretching being very, very crucial. Let's have a look at a group of stretches. We just sort of tried to cover a range that you would do after exercise in this case. So after exercise we're going to look at some sort of resting positions. Out of all of the glute stretches, I've chosen this one because it is the easiest to effect, I think. So what you're going to do is lie down, and then you're going to take this leg, you're going to put the heel over the knee, and then you're going to lift this leg up. And as that leg comes up and the knee comes forwards, you're going to put a stretch across the glute. So the glute is basically like a kind of, well, there's quite a few of them, but let's sort of talk about it as a fan-shaped muscle, and we're just going to stretch that fan out so that you get that kind of whole feeling of stretching right across that sort of fan of the buttock and the side of the pelvis. So this knee pulls in, there you go, that actually feels really good, I've got to say. The reason I chose this one is the easiest one to feel. There's a couple of other glute stretches people sometimes struggle to feel. Notice I've taken my hands and I've put them through to the other side of the thigh, and if I want I can draw in. You want to keep this muscle quite relaxed. All the way through stretching, what we want is a couple of things. One is we want all the muscles to be switched off for the kind of stretching that we're doing now. This is a passive stretch, meaning that all the muscles are passive. And in stretching we do sometimes see that people power the muscles up. I'll show you what I mean. A couple of other glute stretches that you'll see are this one, where you're kind of leaning over, and then also you'll also see this one, where people kind of sit, you took the heel over, and you can kind of lean in, which is a lot like the floor, but I find that people sometimes struggle to feel this one, whereas this on the floor, let's have a look at it again, I think most people seem to find that just much, much more quickly and easily. Okay, next stretch, let's have a look at quads and hips. So I'm going to stick with the sort of simple and classic, so quads and hips. This is not a massive quad stretch or hip stretch, but in terms of like, if a body was dysfunctional, then you would already feel this, like even in this position. You see like the foot here, it's just putting a moderate stretch here. This foot goes forwards and let the hip just rock in, and then we're going to put ever so slightly more stretch along the front and here at the hip. We let the pelvis dip in without putting too much squeeze on the lower back. Then we're going to get a little bit more emphasis across the front and the hip flexors and the quads, so that's nice and simple. For these, in studios and group exercise, you often see people doing a lot of balance. And this is what I mean by keeping the muscles passive. I'll put this bench here for this video so that you can see, always just stabilise, like just touching something will relax your body and you'll get a nice relaxation in a stretch. If your body's kind of firing for balance and all these muscles are like firing up the whole time to try to balance you, then actually it's much harder to effect this relaxation that we're using in this kind of stretching. Yeah. You can take this on a little further into a more advanced sprinter stretch where you might take this up and then lean in, and I mean that will really change that stretch. So if you're in need of something more, then that will really stretch the quad. There we go. That's a good quad stretch. The other one that you see a lot of is this. So again, I'm going to say balance. This is classic, right? Grabbing hold of the foot and leaning in. Two things. One of them is please don't balance. This I don't think achieves great kind of balance practice, but it does get in the way of just relaxing into the stretch. So grab something like a wall or a fence or something like that. Could be a piece of furniture and stretch for me. There we go. Nice and upright. Number one thing again, this idea about not powering into the stretch. So this foot here, strangely enough, when people do this, they tend to kind of power, almost like pushing that foot into the hand. So they create tension here, like they're kind of driving into it, right? I don't know if you can see that muscle action. But you don't want muscle action here. You want to be using the hand and the rest of the body to put this into this kind of inert and relaxed position where it's stretching. Yeah. And then the other thing is the line of the body. So you don't want to have a kind of crease in there, that will take your stretch away. You're looking for a nice straight line. So So that's glutes, and we've had a look at quads and hips. Those are those stretches. Chest stretch, again, nice and easy one, I think. Let's keep it simple. So just take your hands, put them behind, draw your shoulders back and down, and just open the chest gently. This one, again, switch tension off. Don't let your body switch on. Sometimes when people are trying to get in stretches, they actually put a bit of tension in, but we want tension off. So take the chest and stretch the chest by taking the shoulders back and gently down. Here in this fixed position, you can almost kind of concentrate ever so slightly on pushing the chest through. Again, once you're in this position, you've got a reasonably good stretch. I mean, there is a kind of advanced mobility, or really trying to go for a greater range, or really stretch things out, which might need different approach. But this is kind of just basic function, making sure that, you know, if you've got dysfunction, then you're taking it out, rebalancing things. And after exercise, it's the time to do this. Okay, so that's chest. Another chest version is if we stand in this position, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just concentrate on one side. So you're going to draw shoulder back, and then elbow and shoulder blade down, and you'll get more of a stretch across the top here and front. So we can do either both hands down at the same time, and you're looking to get tension in these muscles that's pulling shoulder blades back and down, and to remain relaxed up here. Once that stretch starts and your body gets feedback, so you get that stretch sensation, it is possible to start kind of tensing, and you don't want to tense in the front. You want to use the muscles at the back and relax at the front. We can go both hands at the same time, but then if you watch, you relax and take one just a little bit further back, then you'll get a nice, really nice stretch, different to holding both hands behind, I think. You can also sort of try to concentrate. You can also sort of try to concentrate on getting the shoulders down so that you get a gentle stretch along here. Okay. These muscles are called lev scaps, and they lift our shoulder blades up, and they often are really, really tight. We've got a nice stretch for you for that. So we've just been looking at this position, haven't we? And you'll notice it's really characterised and noticeable by shoulder blade back, down, relax here. One for the neck is if you tilt your head this way and then pull the hand down to get the stretch along the side here. So this is all kind of scalings and lev scap, basically. The key thing about this is it's a neck stretch, but rather than pulling the neck into it, we're actually going to position the neck whilst it's really, really comfortable, and we're going to use the shoulder and the elbow and the shoulder blade to get the stretch. So those things pull away, which is fundamentally really different from like tugging the neck away. So the neck just sort of finds a relaxed position, and you put the stretch on with the arm, and then relax. Yeah. All of these about 30 seconds, by the way. Let's have a look. So we have done quads and hips, we've done some glutes, we've done a little bit of chest. Back stretches we can look at, this kind of thing, gently. This nice and moderate, so that's just getting the shoulder blades wrapped around. To be fair, those are unlikely to really need a lot of stretching. Lats though would like a lot of stretching. Again, returning to my post, what we can do is we can just take this hand and just reach over. Yeah. Use this hand and reach that way. And what we're trying to do is lengthen all of these muscles and create a nice stretch. You can take that a little further by putting this foot across that one, and you just create more of a curve. Let the hips rock out. Get a nice stretch. Good. So then that's lats. Last thing for now, let's have a look at hamstrings. So hamstrings, you can get yourself solid, put a heel down, and then you're going to hinge the hips back with the knees straight. You get a nice stretch there. Again, not so effective when you are balanced. So great to find something to lean on and just sort of push back. You also won't want sort of like a round back and everything, because then you won't get so much of a stretch. You want a nice erect body, push your hips back, and then that wedge shape will get you a nice stretch on hamstrings. There we go. Did say last thing actually, but let's have a look at two other stretches. Nice and simple. One of them being calves. So calves wise, let's have a look. I'll show you this from here. What we're going to do is put a foot down, lean in. I like to rock forwards on the ball of the foot and then slide back onto the heel, and then gently kind of sink into that calf stretch here. So at the moment I've got a straight knee, heels on the floor, I've got a calf stretch there. Yeah, about 30 seconds. Calf stretching is good. This whole back line actually is like, although we separate the muscles as calves, hamstrings, glutes, it's also part of what we call a posterior chain, and it is all connected. So if you do have kind of tightness anywhere, by creating flexibility and by stretching everywhere, you can really work through the system. But if you leave parts of your body and stretch others, then it kind of still just tightens the rest of the system back up. So it's worth getting everything. This is calves. There are other calf stretches, I'm going to leave you with that one. And then my two add-on stretches, one was calves, and a moment ago I said it was the last one, but then I said, okay, let's do the other two. So these are the two add-ons, one's a calf, and then the other one is going to be groin. So groin, take it really moderate, don't aggravate anything. Don't lean forwards and try to hold yourself in. Instead, hands down, chest up, and then you're just going to kind of gently sort of settle here. Again, kind of moderate is fine. Most people will feel this quite kind of early on. Don't need to force it out. If you're already quite comfortable and you want to kind of push it on, then once you've got into this moderate position, you can sort of push in a little bit. Yeah. Hands supporting you behind means that you can be inert and relax into this here. So all of these stretches about 30 seconds. And then also you need to do this when you're warm. So your muscles, think of them like blue tack, you know, when it's cold, if you pull it, it's very brittle and breaks apart. But of course when it's warm, your muscles, they've got all that blood flow. And there's also a couple of other substances floating around, synovial fluid. Really affects the joints, but definitely helps with the stretching. Once you're warm, again, think about that blue tack, warm blue tack just kind of stretches out, doesn't it? Cold blue tack breaks. This passive stretching is for after exercise, and it should be about 30 seconds long. Yeah. One other piece of advice I'll give you is that if you are breaking your days up, one of the things that I often see is people sometimes work really hard on a muscle group, like say they have a chest day or a legs day, and then they stretch that muscle group on that day, okay, but not necessarily on other days. So definitely stretch the muscles that you have worked. That is good injury prevention and helps to reset the body. But actually, if you've worked out, say you did a chest day, but involved in it was a warm up and just kind of keeping your metabolism going in between, which I would advise, if only so that at the end when you come to stretching, you stretch your chest, which is worked, but if your lower body's warm, say legs day was 2 days ago, this is a great day to stretch it, right? Because you haven't just obliterated it with squats and deadlifts and a really, really hard workout, and now you're sort of doing something which is going to help you recover, but not really gain you flexibility. If on the days where you really haven't blitzed a muscle, you are paying attention to stretching it while it's nice and warm because it's kind of been part of the workout but not really worked much, then that's where you get like real difference. So say you went months and months and months and you were squatting strong and heavy, for example, stretching only after legs day. To be honest, your flexibility and the tension in your muscles is going to get kind of worse and worse and worse, even though you're stretching on legs day. But if somewhere else in the week you've got something that you're doing, it could be that you go for a run and do chest day and you do sort of chest and back, but keep your lower body warm, and then on that day you stretch your legs, because you haven't blitzed them that day, and you work the mobility on them, then you can really regain some of the kind of extensibility, flexibility and mobility that you would lose if you only ever stretched on the days that you work those muscles. So yeah, there's probably more complicated things to say about that, but brought down into a summary, my advice is to stretch the muscles you haven't worked, and then if you do a chest and back day, for example, if you've got your workout broken up that way, then include things that keep your lower body warm. I mean, why not, right? Let's just sort of keep the body warm. You're going to need some sort of rest in between. You may as well hit something that is going to kind of it might be to sort of burn a few more calories or to sort of hit your heart rate. If you are trying not to burn too many calories because you're trying to gain muscle, for example, but even then, just keep that lower body warm, and at the end, when you stretch your upper body, because you did chest and back the same goes the other way. Yeah, so there you go, there's a whole kind of stretching routine. And then the only other thing I guess I would say is possibly that I don't think people spend enough time stretching, and I think everybody knows it, and the value is sometimes becomes apparent towards the later part of your fitness journey. So if you're in the middle of it, then that's great, but as you get quite enthusiastic, you start to really work hard, then taking that kind of proactive care of your body so that you can continue to perform, and you can make progress and make real kind of gains in terms of your ability, capacity, fitness, strength. When you make that progress, you make it with hard work, right? And actually, although you're gaining strength and fitness, that hard work does take a toll on the body. And if you proactively recover, so you stretch well frequently, you do mobility work, perhaps you use a foam roller, if you do those things as well, then there's no kind of negative legacy from all the hard work. But if you're doing loads of hard work and your stretching is inadequate, it's easy to sort of take the benefits from the hard work, but several months later pay the price for a lack of mobility, flexibility work. So yeah, my advice is do plenty of it. Do it on, like, stretch the body parts on the days we haven't worked them as well. There you go, some tips for stretching. Thank you. And please subscribe, have a look at some of the other videos. It's a huge subject, stretching. We've only just talked about passive, and it really gets debated a lot about stretching, what the benefit is, when you should do it, should it be active or what have you. But that is another subject, and I don't want to kind of go off. But yeah, subscribe, have a look at the other videos, and if it's not there already, then I'll definitely post something sort of expanding this whole kind of question or subject of stretching.